Welcome to today's episode. Let's talk about today's guest. We have Olga Yatsyna from VeliTech, CMO with them. How are you doing today, Olga?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting me.
It's great to have you on. And well, Olga, I'm sure our listeners are tuning in, wondering what VeliTech is all about. So let's kick it off with that. In your own words, can you tell us a little bit more?
Yes, sure. So VeliTech is a provider of B2B digital products for iGaming companies. In a nutshell, we built a whole ecosystem of products and, of course, services that help businesses launch and operate online entertainment platform or, for example, sports betting business. To explain it in a couple of words, like in simple words, let's imagine that I'm an entrepreneur. I have some money that I want to invest in the sports betting business. So I need to get a license because this is license operation. Of course, I need some shiny website where my players can come and play. But at the same time, there is a whole bunch of technology stack that I need to operate as a business in order to communicate with my players, to do push notifications, to store the information, to do identity checks, age verifications, etc., etc. So this is huge technology stack that needs to be created, maintained, in order for me as a business to have smooth operations and nice communication. And this is what we do at VeliTech. We basically provide this infrastructure to such businesses in order to launch and operate their online casino or sports betting brand.
Definitely. Okay. Also, awesome. Great to hear that. And so that way, Olga, that way our listeners can get a good understanding there of VeliTech. What would you say is that key problem that you guys like to solve for clients then?
The key problem for any business that is launching is getting everything sorted out, like getting the solid foundation where that can be used for further operations. So we are from the very beginning solving this problem with our ecosystem of products. We built a range of products that are covering basically all needs of any online entertainment business, starting from player account management, AI-based CRM, payment system, content management, and we provide this as a already functioning engine that you just can tune in and start your operations. So the key problem that we are solving is actually providing this ecosystem as a single organism, as a single infrastructure that does not require any additional integrations, any additional tools, or any other add-ons for such businesses that want to launch, for example, or switch their brand into the new digital infrastructure.
Okay. Interesting. So then, is there a certain vertical segment that you guys like to focus? Is there an ideal ICP there for VeliTech?
Yes, we built this ecosystem of products, specifically keeping in mind the needs and challenges of the iGaming businesses. And that's really important to understand for any business that is looking for stack of products or some technology to close their challenges. If you have some specific industry that you're operating in, for example, iGaming industry is one of such industries. It's really niche. It's very specific in terms of how it operates. That's why it requires customized solutions. And really often our clients are either building their own solutions because they really want something customized and specifically tailored to their needs, or they tune in our iGaming, created specifically for iGaming industry product. So we, for that specific reason, created our stack of products only for iGaming players.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Love that. So then how would somebody then usually find out about VeliTech then, Olga? Is there a top client acquisition channel for you guys?
Yes, but it's kind of changing now. But before we talk about the acquisition channels, I'd like to give some little background on how, in general, iGaming industry works. This is pretty small niche. There are many local players that are playing in some specific countries or regions, and there are maybe 20 to 30 players that are playing globally, and they provide a range of products that is pretty similar maybe to our. So whenever somebody new comes to this market and starts playing global, like we did a year ago when we started VeliTech, starts to go to the industry events, starts doing some advertising, some account-based marketing. That's really noticeable. And people start talking because everybody always knows a guy who knows a guy. So people start talking about you. And referral in this case becomes your key acquisition channel. However, with the time, this referral engine is exhausted. And we started to switch on our account-based marketing and content engines. So we are now operating maybe 70 to 30, I'd say, as a ratio of lead generation, where we have part coming from referrals and part coming from our account-based marketing and content engines.
Okay, interesting. I like that like switch to that approach that you guys did, because you mentioned, right? Referrals are always one of the best things, but there's always the ABM, which is really nice to have as well. So as far as that way, our listeners who are tuned in could go out and visit you. Then they could always check you out at VeliTech.com. What role then does a website play for client acquisition?
When we're talking about the contracts with the value of over $100,000, we understand that people rarely choose the product or the provider solely based on the sexy website. And this is the key thing to understand how we work with our website, because we were consciously creating our website, keeping that in mind, because we have really high check in our industry. And we understand that people will not choose based on the information on our website, but our website is one of the touch points with our clients during our content marketing or our account-based marketing approach. And we are working from this point of view with our website. So I believe that our strengths in this case is having all the information about our product and about the challenges that we solve for the clients on our website, and not relying on our website as on the conversion engine or the key lead generation engine. And that's really also important to understand for everyone who is working in the B2B marketing field with quite expensive price for the contract with the clients.
Okay, interesting. I love that. So then, is there any tools then or tips that you would recommend to our listeners as far as some website lead generation?
Well, we probably faced all the pains and gains when we were building our website, and we have many learnings, probably, which is enough for the whole fuck up night that I can tell you about. But I'd say that one of the key learnings during the last year is that you need to build your website and see your website with the eyes of your clients. For example, we created one of the big sections in our website is one of our products, Horizon, which is the back office platform for entertainment businesses. And we noticed with the flow of time that whenever somebody is visiting our website and then visiting websites of our competitors, they are not expecting to see, for example, retail information on this product page, because this is pure digital product. So why would you expect to see the retail page there or the retail information? But we did not consider this fact that people are checking competitors' website, checking our website, they are comparing, they see more or less the same information, and that's it. So we understood with the flow of time that we have to separate the retail part from the Horizon page in order to make it more noticeable for our clients. And one of the key learnings for us was that we need to explore the competitors. We need to understand how other people in our market are talking about their products. And from that point of view, evaluate how people see at the same time our pages, see our products, and present the information in the most convenient and the most comfortable way for our clients. At the same time, when you have the product, especially if it's a digital product, not the service is a bit more complicated, but when you have the digital product, you need to show the screenshots. It's really important. Even if it's ugly screenshot, it's better to show the screenshot instead of writing some marketing fluff, some marketing bullshit text, because you need to show your product instead of 1,000 words. if you have the possibility to add the screenshots, to add the diagrams, to add some schemes, videos, add it to your website instead of silent words, because that's really important to speak visually to your clients and to visually communicate the information about your product to them. And for many marketers, I can recommend to really dive deep in the sales process, because that's also really helpful in understanding how the website is working for your clients and what place it takes in the purchase decision.
Definitely important. I love that from you. Thank you so much for sharing that knowledge with us. And well, let's switch gears then a little bit here, Olga, and let's talk about you as a leader, you being the CMO there for VeliTech. What are some key tasks you like to focus on your day-to-day work?
Well, I'm combining now two roles, the CMO at VeliTech and the Chief Communication Officer at Ven Group, which is our holding company. And at the same time, I'm becoming an all-around worker who is doing one meeting about one company and the second meeting about second company. So my day-to-day work is full of meetings, as for many senior managers. And I can probably call myself the goddess of delegation, because I've got the fantastic team who are each leading their line of business. So my day-to-day work is more about strategic tasks, strategic discussions, than some routine work that is got covered by my team.
Definitely. Okay. And interesting. So in your between time then, Olga, how do you like to stay up to date with all the news in the marketing world as far as trends, strategies? Is there a preferred channel that you like to go with?
Yes, definitely. But as a mom of two, I have limited time for this. So any working parent will now understand me that you never have time for something free, for some learning. So I'm walking to stay fit. And at the same time, I'm listening podcasts. One of my favorites recently is the Exit 5 podcast. I love it. It's extremely interesting for B2B marketers, very useful, hands-on. And I love the Href podcast, which was recently launched. It's also really interesting with some cool guys coming there talking about content marketing, work of the CMO, and how the landscape of marketing work is changing. And newsletters, of course. Guys, don't forget about newsletters. This is the news delivered right to your inbox. You don't need to look for it somewhere. People get the selection of best content for you and deliver it to your inbox. Exit 5 newsletter, B2 Boring newsletter, S-Month newsletter. Yeah, check it out.
Definitely. You're great for that plug. Thank you so much. Do appreciate that. Well, then let's jump into our next section then here, Olga, which is our rapid fire question rounds. Are you ready for that?
Yes.
Perfect. Also, then first up is, what is the last book that you read?
It's David Marker Turned the Ship Around, about changing the landscape of leader follower structure of work into leader structure of work. I don't know if you read it, but it's about US Navy worst performing nuclear submarine crew that shifted into this leader performance structure, and that dramatically changed the performance.
Okay, all right. Interesting read there for our listeners. Next up then is, if there be no boundaries in technology, what would be that one thing that you want to have fixed for your role as a marketer today?
Attribution. That's really screwed up now with all the security measures, GDPR. As a person, like a person who's using the internet, I'm definitely for such changes, because I want to feel protected and I want to feel safe. But as a marketer, I really want to cry when I'm trying to dig into our analytics and understand how the different channels are working for us and what we get from some channels. Especially as a CMO, I have to prepare reporting for the CFO. Yes, sometimes I really want to cry.
Definitely. I think everybody's every marketer out there, that's their Achilles tendon. So there's a lot of people in the same boat as you. And so then, if there's one repetitive task that you could automate, Olga, what would that be?
Probably dynamic content generation and personalization based on user behavior. I know that there are tools that can cover this personalization part to some extent now. Actually, Pestmark is one of them, as I understood. But still, the dynamic content generation, which is created based on people, for example, searching somewhere over the internet and then visiting my website. And my website is compiling some content specifically for their search intent and showing it in a personalized way. That's something that is beyond the security measures, but I'm doing a lot to see how that may work, considering how we want to personalize our interaction with the visitors on the website.
Definitely. Okay. Great to hear that from you. And well, lastly, Olga, there's no denying you have the experience in the marketing world, but what would be that one piece of advice that you would give yourself if you were to restart your journey as a marketer today?
That would be probably, don't try to be a nice person to everyone and the marketer who knows everything, or at least who pretends that he or she knows everything. That's a really common mistake for many junior and middle level marketers, and all probably professional who would like to grow to the senior level. They want to show that they have expertise, so they pretend that they know everything. But saying that you don't know something doesn't make you weak or less expert than you are. You have to know where to get answers, or you have to get a good team that will help you get the answers. Remember about delegation.
And that's very important, especially in the marketing world, right? You just mentioned attribution is still one of the, it's still, no marketer is going to tell you exactly what it is. So definitely love that point of view. Thank you so much for sharing that, Olga. And well, Olga, we are coming to the end of the show here today. But before we do end, I do want to give you the last word. So say someone forgets everything about the interview today. What is that one thing they should remember about VeliTech?
Oh my God, that's the most complicated question. Learn the challenges of your clients, and remember that you can always tweak your positioning, your products, and your messaging when you learn more about the clients. That's what we learned at VeliTech during the last year, which was really a challenging and complicated year for us, especially considering that a big part of our team is in Ukraine. But still, we are learning about the clients, and we don't afraid to admit our mistakes and change our products to make them more corresponding to the needs of our clients.
Definitely important. Love that from you. And to our listeners, check them out at VeliTech.com. They have custom solutions with lasting partnerships. Olga, I do want to thank you so much for being on with us, as well as to our listeners for tuning in. And I'm looking forward to our next episode at Pathmount Presents. Thanks a lot, Olga.